I'm Carole Leathem, and you're listening to a bonus episode of the Caretakers Journey podcast. I am your host, and I want to welcome you to day 26 of our 31-day Caretakers Resolve Challenge. Today is January 26th, and we are just about a week away from being done with our 1 month, 31 days of resolves. Today, our resolve is to improve communication. Now, we already did a resolve about communication. This one's a little bit different. So grab your Post-it note and write, I resolve to learn strategies to better communicate with my loved one, especially if they have dementia or a special need. I have been struggling with this with my mom, who has fallen into dementia. She has some other health issues. She's on hospice, and her mind is slowly being taken over by dementia, and she cannot remember. So effective communication with our loved ones as a caretaker requires patience, empathy, and adaptability, especially if our loved one has special needs, or in the case of my mom, dementia. So, here are a few ways that I have learned over the last few months to communicate with my mom who struggles with a form of dementia. I have had to simplify my language. I have to use short sentences. I have to use simple words. She just cannot take a lot of words at the same time, and she can't understand big, fancy words anymore. It has to be very, very simple. I also have to ask one question at a time, and I have to wait for her to answer. I have to give her one direction or instruction at a time and wait for her to accomplish that, and then go on to the next one. We just went through a process. She was having some terrible issues with her phone. So we went to a program, which is a child's phone, which only accepts calls and text messages from approved people, because we were having issues with her giving away information, with people getting into her phone, and it was just creating so much drama. We thought simplifying to a new phone, which only makes calls and text messages, would be so easy. But she gets so confused. She can't find things on the desktop of the phone. And I need to tell her, go here, then wait for her to go there. Now go here, push this. And I have to wait for her to accomplish it before we go any further. And if I say things like desktop of the phone, she doesn't understand. If I say face of the phone, she doesn't understand. It's been quite a challenge learning to communicate with her, and more often than not, it needs to be repeated. So, how frustrating is it when you are constantly saying the same thing over and over? Well, I have learned that maintaining a calm tone and speaking gently and softly is very important, because if I make her feel rushed or frustrated, we might as well stop having a conversation and wait for a while and start over. Now, sometimes I live in California, my mom lives in Milwaukee. Sometimes it takes a boots on the ground person. So either my niece or my sister will go over, or on February 1st, I'm going back for 2 weeks to help with her care. We have to do nonverbal communication in the form of gestures, facial expressions, body language. Some of these things help get our messages across. For instance, we've had to show her a Post-it note, put the Post-it note on her scooter, put the Post-it note on the front door, so when she goes out the front door, she sees it. And they all say the same thing: please turn on your oxygen. Because when she leaves in the house, she's got a concentrator. She's constantly attached. But when she gets on her scooter and goes out the door, she is constantly forgetting to turn on her oxygen. And we're trying to find ways to make that happen. So nonverbal communication, we've taught her, we show her. Sometimes it works. More often than not, it doesn't. I have found that if it's going to work, you can maintain eye contact, and that helps to keep them involved and attentive. The other thing, one day I was having a conversation with her, and I was standing in front of her chair, and she kept trying to look around me. I could see her kind of like moving around me, and she kept trying to see the TV. So we have to eliminate distractions by creating a quiet and calm environment and eliminating the background noises. And in the situation with my mom, I need to turn off the TV if I want to have a conversation with her because she will get distracted by what's going on the TV. I just talked a little bit about this because we use Post-it notes. And isn't it funny? I'm a Post-it note girl. We use Post-it notes as reminders in a lot of different ways for her. Post-it notes that say, here's your Kindle, Post-it notes to remind her that she needs to go get her hair cut, Post-it notes. And she's getting to the point where we have to contact the nurses and they have to create a schedule of reminding her because she's pretty much past the memory aids and the Post-it notes. But Post-it notes are great for this, and using them for memory aids. Incorporate photos. We had all of our family members, I put them into the phone, I approved them. They all sent photos of who they are so that when my mom gets a call or a text, now she can look at that person and it will help remind her and reinforce who she's talking to. I used to use a calendar and whiteboards for her, and we would help her remember dates and appointments and schedules. She used to be able to go on to a calendar on her phone. She's not able to do that anymore. We always need to acknowledge our loved one's emotions before we respond or correct. One day, my mom was so mad at me and she was being really difficult. This was back in July. We had just put her on hospice. She was really struggling. And we had gone out first to run some errands to get out of the house. And she had just been so upset. And she was just spitting mad at me and she was being difficult. So we walked back into her apartment and she flopped down into her chair. And I kind of went over and stood by the window and waited for her to kind of just settle in. And if she could be spitting, she would be spitting. She was that mad. So I walked over and I sat down on the floor in front of her chair and I calmly put my hand on her knee and I said, "Mama, what is going on?" Well, it only took a second and a calm voice for her to feel safe enough. And she started to cry. And she said, "I have lost so much and you are being so mean to me." Well, I had a choice to make at that moment because I could correct her and say, "I'm not being mean to you." But what I chose to do was focus on what the real truth she was trying to tell me was, I've lost so much. And she was attaching that to me because I was the one who was taking away the credit cards and taking away the keys to the car. I mean, over the last 2 years, my mom has lost so much. We can focus on the "you're being so mean to me," or I can focus on the "I've lost so much." And at that moment, I chose to focus on the "I've lost so much." And I affirmed her. I didn't comment on the "I'm being mean" because it was untrue. And sometimes we just don't need to correct them. But it is true that she's lost so much. And in her mind, that was the only way that she could find to attach the emotions that she was struggling with. We always repeat and rephrase if needed. If my mom doesn't understand, I try to rephrase with different words instead of repeating myself. Somehow, if I keep repeating myself, I just get frustrated. She just gets frustrated. And if I'm patient and I rephrase with different words, I'm giving her extra time to process and respond. I'm being patient with her. We need to acknowledge our loved ones. I need to acknowledge my mom's efforts and successes. It's kind of like positive reinforcement. When the nurse calls me and says, "Hey, your mom came down to lunch today and she had her oxygen on." Well, when I call my mom, this is the afternoon, and my mom's in her chair relaxing, and I say, "Hey, Tammy told me that you turned your oxygen on today." And she'll get all excited because she feels like she's being like a child. The positive reinforcement feels good. I have to be aware that we have to use consistent language with both my husband and my mom. I have to use the same words or phrases for specific requests because this helps build their understanding. And here's a big one. Sometimes I talk too fast and I don't listen well. I have to practice what we've already talked about in another resolve, active listening, which means I'm not formulating my answer. I'm listening. I'm waiting, and then I'm responding. I focus on what they're trying to communicate, even if it's nonverbal, and then decide how to respond. Well, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, and I would love to hear if you have some ideas or strategies that you have come up with. I would love to hear them. I would love to share them with our community. If you want to just email me and tell me what they are, that would be so amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you know a caretaker, share this show with them using the links in the show notes below. My resources for these resolves is my book, Are You Ready to Find Joy When Life Gets Messy? And if you want to know more about my caretaking journey and how it started, the link to purchase my book is below. If you want an in-depth copy of the Caretakers 31-Day Resolve Challenge, join my email list, see the link below, and I'll let you know how to get it when it becomes available. As I close out today's episode, I want to pray for you. God, I have become so aware of the need for patience and adaptability and communication, especially with my mom and her dementia. I pray for the caretakers who are out there today who are struggling to communicate with a loved one, whether it's dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's some other mental illness. I pray, God, that we would be patient. I pray, God, that we would not talk fast, that we would practice active listening. And God, more than anything, I just pray that we would just understand that their frustration and their confusion is not meant to frustrate and confuse us. And so many times that's how it feels. God, I pray that you will just continue to guide and direct me and the other caretakers who are listening. God, I know that this is a hard journey that we're all on, and I know that it changes constantly. God, I pray that you will just continue to walk before us, to walk behind us. And as always, God, I love that you walk right beside us. We ask all this in your precious Son's name. Let me bless you. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. I'll be back tomorrow for day 27. And until then, it's all about him.